Welcome to the deep dive. We're doing what we always do here, taking that source material you sent over and really pulling out the key insights for you.
Yeah, getting right to the core of it.
Exactly. So today, we're looking at Ralph D. Winter's piece, Reconsecration to a Wartime, Not a Peacetime Lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Winter, for anyone maybe less familiar, was a really significant figure in mission work in the last century. A missionary himself for years, started organizations focused on, reaching groups who hadn't heard the gospel.
And his central argument here, it's still so potent. He draws this parallel between, well, the total mobilization a country goes through in wartime like World War II. He uses that example a lot.
Right.
And the kind of commitment he thinks Christians should have towards what he terms the spiritual war of the Great Commission.
It's a strong analogy.
Yeah.
And the way he illustrates it with the Queen Mary, that really hits home, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
You picture this ship, peak luxury, in peacetime fancy dining, the works.
Yeah, total opulence.
Then war breaks out, and bam, it's a troop carrier. 15 dishes become one metal tray. A few thousand rich passengers become 15,000 soldiers crammed into bunks.
Such a stark transformation, just completely repurposed.
And that shift is all about national survival, right? Pure necessity.
Exactly. And Winter takes that urgency, that same feeling, and applies it spiritually. He's arguing that, well, just like a nation sacrifices everything to survive physically, the spiritual fate of millions depends on Christians treating the Great Commission with that kind of immediate wartime focus.
Which leads him to identify a major roadblock, something many of us probably feel, actually, affluence. He says it pretty bluntly. Our obedience has been poisoned by affluence. And when he uses the word consecration, he means setting things apart for holy use.
So the idea is that our wealth, which we might see as purely a blessing, could actually be, well, hindering this bigger spiritual purpose. It's a challenging thought.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
What do you make of that tension?
Well, it's tough, but he doesn't just leave it there. He gives examples, right? People like Borden of Yale.
Well, gave up a fortune.
Right. Or Francis of Assisi embracing poverty. These figures show it is possible to put a higher calling above, material comfort.
And then he makes this interesting comparison between how missionaries historically lived
with austerity
versus Protestants back home. Missionaries often shared resources, lived simply. There was already this built-in wartime priority lifestyle in that context.
Yeah, that's a key point. And the question he's really wrestling with is why that level of consecration, that wartime footing, didn't spread more widely through the church back home.
Okay, so why didn't it? He lists several reasons, and they're pretty insightful. Let's maybe walk through those.
Sure. First off, he suggests some people just think the whole Great Commission thing is, well, impossible on a global scale. Too big.
Right, feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And second, that world problems were either hopeless or that, politics or technology will fix everything anyway.
Yeah, kind of minimizing the need for a spiritual dimension to the solution.
Then there's the tendency, maybe a natural one, to focus on problems right in front of us, domestic issues over global ones.
That makes sense. He also addresses a misunderstanding, the idea that becoming Christian means totally abandoning your own culture.
Like the Greeks in Paul's time, he mentions.
Yeah.
Christianity adapted. It didn't just erase Greek culture.
Exactly. Then there's the danger of thinking God's blessings are just for our nation, like the ancient Hebrews sometimes thought.
And this next one seems central to his main argument. Well-paid evangelicals seeing their money as just theirs. Personal use. A reward.
Yeah, rather than a responsibility, not seeing it as something to steward for others' needs, both spiritual and material.
What does that specific point make you think about, just in terms of how we view wealth individually?
It really gets back to that core idea of reconsecration, doesn't it? Shifting from entitlement to stewardship. And he connects it to that principle of, losing your life to save it.
Implying that holding back from this kind of sacrifice actually harms us spiritually in the long run.
Potentially, yeah. That seems to be his point.
And following that, he critiques America, or perhaps affluent societies generally, as save-yourself societies. And he points out this paradox.
The paradox of affluence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have the diseases of poverty so much, but we have new problems linked to excess. Obesity, heart disease, addiction.
Divorce rates, mental health issues, prisons. It's a sobering list.
It really contrasts sharply with the struggles in less developed places. Material wealth clearly isn't the whole picture for well-being.
Not at all. And this leads him to that really striking comparison he makes.
The Pray, Give, or Go slogan versus the group in India.
Exactly. The Friends Missionary Prayer Band in South India. He contrasts the common U.S. evangelical approach, where maybe just praying feels like enough, with this group. They had 8,000 members, much poorer relatively speaking, but they were supporting 80 full-time missionaries.
That's incredible. And then he does that calculation, what his own denomination could do with similar per capita commitment.
Yeah, suggesting they should be backing tens of thousands of missionaries, not just a fraction of that.
And that's where he uses that phrase from Luis Palau, studied mediocrity. Ouch.
It's deliberately provocative, isn't it? It really challenges complacency.
It absolutely does. And it kind of sets up his next point, which is pretty heavy.
The idea about God's wrath.
Yeah. That maybe it's directed more towards those who have been given resources and knowledge but refuse to share
than towards those who simply haven't had the chance to hear. It flips the usual perspective on responsibility, really.
He then uses some numbers that are just, wow. American evangelicals spending 4 times more on weight loss programs than on global missions.
$8 billion versus $2 billion annually, I think, were the figures he cited. Trying to lose what we have versus giving to others.
And he breaks it down even more personally, saying the extra money someone might spend on food in a month, just enough to gain a little weight, is often more than what many give to missions in that same time.
And the implication there is so practical. Small changes in our own habits, maybe simpler meals, mindful consumption.
Right, not drastic sacrifice necessarily.
Could collectively free up huge amounts for mission work. It brings it down to very personal choices and priorities.
And he pulls in some strong imagery from Isaiah and Ezekiel to back this up.
Yeah, the Old Testament prophets.
Calling the people dead branches, a foolish nation needing harsh lessons. And Ezekiel's picture of people listening politely, but really just loving money.
And that image from Ezekiel 34, the fat shepherds ignoring the thin, weak sheep, that really captures the idea of the comfortable overlooking the needy, doesn't it?
It's incredibly vivid, and it all builds toward his main conclusion, quoting Jesus from Luke. Unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required.
That's the crux of it.
His conviction is that God expects a level of commitment from us for reaching others that's comparable to a nation's all-out effort for its own survival in wartime.
With the ultimate goal, quoting Isaiah again, that the poor, the people who sit in darkness, shall see a great light.
So given all that diagnosis, what's the prescription? What does he actually propose people do?
He calls it adopting a wartime lifestyle, grounded in how pioneer missionaries lived.
Okay.
And he makes a distinction. Some can physically go as missionaries, but others who stay home can adopt the financial standard of a missionary at their support level as their personal standard of living.
Regardless of how much they actually earn.
Exactly. Live on that amount, and the rest is intentionally directed towards mission.
And the potential impact he outlines, using the example of Presbyterians living on a minister's salary.
Billions freed up annually, specifically for what he calls developmental missions. The scale is potentially huge.
So that's where those organizations he was involved with come in. The Presbyterian Order for World Evangelization.
Right. Their goal was twofold. Build concern for the unreached and offer practical help for living within those mission-level budgets.
They actually had a plan, like steps to follow.
Yeah, a 6-step plan, he mentions. Education, coaching, helping families figure out how to live on a typical mission agency salary.
And the idea was the money above that level
would be deliberately, prayerfully allocated to mission causes by the individual or family based on their own convictions.
That's a fascinating model, taking the financial discipline that's existed in missions for centuries.
Yeah, the consistent standard of living.
And applying it to the donors, to the supporters back home. He saw that as not just necessary, but potentially beneficial, fulfilling, even for those with higher incomes.
Yeah, it's quite a novel application of an old principle, extending that missional framework to the support base.
He does seem aware, though, that this kind of call, this radical reconsecration, won't be easy. It'll face resistance.
Oh, absolutely. He compares it to the prophet's warnings, knowing it might not be popular, but he insists the message isn't just his own idea.
Right. He sees it as rooted in Scripture and the urgency of the task.
So wrapping it up, Winter's core message, really, for you listening, is this urgent call for a pretty radical shift in lifestyle for believers.
Yeah, a dedication that mirrors wartime footing, all aimed at addressing global spiritual needs.
That Queen Mary image really sticks, doesn't it? Peacetime luxury versus wartime necessity.
It does. He's basically asking, Are we living in peacetime comfort when the situation demands wartime austerity and focus, in this spiritual sense?
Which leaves us with that final thought, that question for you to ponder. What would this wartime lifestyle actually look like in your daily life?
How does his call challenge how you view your resources, your time, your priorities, given the needs he highlights?
Yeah, what responsibility comes with the abundance many of us have? It's definitely something to think about.